In this video, we will dive into the differences between two great constructivist psychologists who claimed that knowledge is a product of social interaction and culture. Vygotsky was a true pioneer in formulating some postulates that have been taken up by psychology several decades later and have given rise to important findings on the functioning of cognitive processes. Perhaps one of the most important is that all higher psychological processes, communication, language, reasoning, etc., are first acquired in a social context and then internalized. One of the best-known examples of this is when a young child begins to point to objects with his finger. For the child, this gesture is simply an attempt to grasp the object. But when the mother pays attention to it and interprets that this movement is intended not only to grasp but to point, then the child will begin to internalize this action as the representation of pointing. In Lev Vygotsky's own words, diaresis, an interpersonal process, is transformed into an intrapersonal one. In the cultural development of the child, every function appears twice, first, on a social scale, and later, on an individual scale, first, between people, interpsychological, and later, within the child, intrapsychological. The explanation for this is that their connection is genetic or evolutionary. That is, external processes are transformed to create internal processes. The processes of internalization are not the transfer of an external activity to a pre-existing internal plane of consciousness, it is the process in which that plane of consciousness is formed. Based on constructivist ideas, learning is not a simple matter of transmission and accumulation of knowledge, but an active process on the part of the learner who assembles, extends, restores and interprets, and therefore constructs knowledge based on his experience and integrates it with the information he receives. Piaget is strongly influenced for Vygotsky, but he sees the evolution of the child in a distinct way. For Piaget, the role of egocentric language is completely opposite. From being an internal function of the child, language gradually becomes a socialized function. In this view, egocentric language represents the intermediate step through which language function gradually manifests itself and is finally externalized into socialized language. According to Piaget, cognitive development occurs through the assimilation of information and exchanges that take place directly with the environment, thus enabling the structuring of well-organized mental representations, cognitive schemas. As a result, 5 stages or periods of intellectual growth are determined, having different levels of cognitive functioning that develop during the course of life. The ordering of these stages is fixed and universal despite the fact that individual differences.
Created using Powtoon.